So I think we could probably get started. Welcome everybody to the law firm edition of our benchmarking report. Very excited to have you, and if you're watching the recording, very excited to have you watch it after the fact. Normally, my co-host is Dr. Rebecca Pollock, but she is neck deep in academic crazy end of year things. So she's unfortunately unable to join us, but she and I collaborated on this, and if we have any questions for her afterwards, can always send her an email. But otherwise, very excited to have this session. If you don't know much about PeoplePath, I think most people here do, we just like to remind everyone that we are here for lifelong relationships, and we believe that they are the foundation for mutual success. And so a little bit about PeoplePath is that we are spread around the world. We're a small company, but I'm in San Diego. We have people in Seattle and all over the US, New York. We have people in Europe, in Munich, and in Pilsen. So we are kind of all over and just working our best to make sure that we bring you the best possible platform. And if you aren't already, just a simple plug here to follow us on LinkedIn. We do share all of our best practices, any interesting data points, and just try to connect people there as much as we can. So if you're not already following us there, just make sure to scan here, or when you get the recording and the slides, you can click on the link. Either way, excited to have you join us there and keep up with everything on LinkedIn. So let's jump into the 2025 benchmarking. So every year we kind of start with a few goals. We've been doing the report now for 11 years, and each year we try to find kind of a core thing, but we always look at our broad year-over-year trends. We try to keep everything as consistent as we can so we can see what changes over time. But each year we add in kind of a new section. So this year we were looking at the integration of alumni programs at the exit, and also how AI will shape alumni programming. In past years, we've looked at things like engagement, and so we kind of trade those off and on each year. And so this year was just new sections for us, and we'll dive into some of those today. If you have any questions throughout this, please don't hesitate to add them in the chat. It is just me, so I will get to them as soon as I see them, or a natural stopping point. Also, at the end, there's time for Q&A as well. So the first part of this was we always look at the characteristics and the benefits of the programs. And so we can start to see our first kind of differences between the general respondents and law firm respondents. And so for number of registered members in 2025, all respondents on average had about 15,000, and law firms had about 4,500. The reason for this is typically because in the all company section, we tend to see a lot of consulting firms and financial services firms. They have huge numbers, and so that's part of what changes that a bit. But with law firms, it tends to be in that tighter range in about 4,500. So just working with a different size of audience. We looked at the budget. On average, the number I would use here is on the left. So for every company, the average budget in 2025 was 175,000. For law firms, it was 185,000. So just a little bit more for law firms. But if you want to see the breakouts in our categories, we tend to look at less than 100,000, 100 to 200,000, or 300,000 and more. And so for all companies, that 300,000 or more was about 466,000 on average. And for law firms, it was about 313. So a little lower on that end, and a little higher when it was less than 100. So these are just benchmarking, so you can use them as your requesting budget for the new year. But I would look at that average number to kind of guide you into some of your conversations you're having. But we start to break it down a little bit more, and so we think about platform usage. And so we ask about dedicated third-party platforms like PeoplePath. And so 68% of all respondents use a third party, and 63% of law firms tend to use this, so not much lower. Some law firms are using CRM solutions specifically. This 10 to 16 is usually a couple of people, so that helps you kind of give a number beyond percentages. And then 7% and 6% all in law firm tend to use only LinkedIn groups. We do recommend that if you're using a CRM or a third party like PeoplePath, LinkedIn groups are great. Having one that is kind of controlled by the brand is an additional value to add. And so we don't think that it's a bad thing to have both. We think that they complement each other pretty well. But using only a LinkedIn group just is limiting. It doesn't give you all the data that you need or all the control to find out more about your users. Continuing on in the benefits, so there really wasn't much change this year when it comes to what programs are offering. And so the chart that was in the benchmarking report that showed what companies are offering was the same for law firms as it was for everyone else. And so typically you're seeing the standard things that get offered year over year: company news, alumni newsletters, websites, in-person events, virtual events, directories. The only real difference here was that exclusive company content here was about 41% for everyone, but it was about 29% for law firms. So that was the only noticeable statistical difference, and it wasn't by much. So the only thing law firms could probably do a bit more is sharing their own story a bit more. The thing we pulled out this year was about mobile numbers. And so 16% of respondents in general were using mobile apps. And so we do think this is an opportunity to think about adding this feature because it connects the user more to the program and the platform by having it more accessible on their phone, which most people are these days. So just that we see it will likely grow in the next few years of having that capability. The other creative things we asked about this year, the innovative benefits that people are offering, also was very similar amongst law firms. So some fun examples we pulled out were just publishing an alumni yearbook, offering mentoring programs, including volunteering and corporate social responsibility opportunities, and on-demand wellness programs. So those could be virtual, they could be for mental health, they could be physical, they could be yoga, really kind of ran the gambit of what this meant, but just really thinking more about health in general was something that we thought stood out to us. But this was the same across law firms and every other respondent. We did focus on AI. And so this was interesting for us to see kind of the first year we've asked in the report. But 64% of everyone responded with some kind of interest in AI and an AI assistant specifically for content generation, event planning, other things. Only about half of law firms were interested in it for this perspective. 26% of everyone was interested in some kind of chatbot to support alumni themselves. Only 12% of law firms were. And then 9% of all companies said that they were not using AI at all or weren't allowed to, and only 6% of law. So again, thinking about not percentages, but probably 1 or 2 people. We do expect this to change as AI becomes more prevalent and more strategic for firms, but it could also not change. We have seen some pushback from some companies wanting to keep things more high level human touch. So we'll see. We're very interested to see where that changes over the next few years. So that was it for the characteristics and benefits, and we kind of moved into the employee life cycle. And this is one of my favorite things because I think law firms really do succeed in this in such great ways. But introducing alumni earlier on in the employee life cycle. And so on average, the last few years, we've seen this stays pretty steady. And so 43% of respondents said that they would promote it to new employees, but 50% of the law firms that we asked do this. Also in the onboarding process, 60% for general and 72% in legal. And we do think this is an interesting change because 5 to 10 years ago, you would never really see an alumni program be promoted to employees or recruits so early on. So to see 50% and 72% is really indicative of where things are going amongst law firms. This number for boomerangs was the same for law firms and for the general respondents. This on average has been 7 to 8% for the last few years. We typically say just 8% just to make it easier. There are reports. ADP did a really interesting report recently about boomerangs and some of their survey stuff, and they found it's between 20 and 30%, which for us, we found the same thing when companies did more at the exit. So at the time that somebody's leaving, the more you do to help and make that a really good experience, you are more likely to see the return on investment happen later. So something like returning. So we do in our own data see 25 to 30% as an average rate if there are more activities. But on average for whole programs, law firms and others, it's about 8%. We talked about career mobility in this survey a bit more, and we kind of grouped it together as this. And so it was the same for law firms as it was for all general respondents, the things that are being offered. So the number one thing that people are offering for mobility specifically is job postings at the organization you work at, so about 80%. And job postings at other companies was about 59%, which is typically a really nice value add for the company to offer it to clients. It's a really nice way to build relationships for opportunities for business development. Also allowing alumni to post jobs at their current companies is a nice value add for them to want to use it. So kind of doing all of these things just provides more services, more value, more benefit. But we also see continuing education resources and career development resources, contractor roles, and offering a marketplace for alumni was relatively new this year. And what that is something I've seen pop up more and more across the board, which is offering skills. So if someone has skills, like maybe they're a graphic designer or a consultant and some expertise, they will put it onto this board and say, hey, I have these skills. I offer an hourly rate. If anyone needs them, come talk to me. On the other side, somebody might need those skills. And so they might say, hey, I'm looking for a graphic designer or consultant that has expertise in a certain field. And they will post that they're searching for this on the same page. So in our platform, at least, it's an additional offering that we provide if requested. It is an upgraded feature, but it is something we are seeing is just providing a nice value add and offering more skills and things like that to connect it back to the alumni's need for new features. So within that, we also wanted to think about career transition support. And so we found that both legal firms and the general respondents focus primarily on career counseling. And so here on the right-hand side, the things that are being offered at Off the Offboarding: career counseling, job search support, interview training, online network training, and resume and cover letter assistance. When it came to law firms, that's where the biggest difference was. 55% of everyone is offering this, but only 25% of law firms are tending to offer this. And it could just be because resume and cover letter might be more of a junior role, and you might be focusing more on maybe mid to senior career levels. That's a guess that we had. But essentially, career counseling specifically for law firms is 75%. And so it's just a really interesting to see that this has become strategy. And largely we see it not necessarily for talent, we see it for business development. By helping to build a pipeline of people that are going to leave or want to leave and helping them find roles at clients or at current clients or current opportunities creates a solid business development pipeline. McKinsey, consulting firm, is the godfather of doing this, and they'll say something like 40% of their ROI comes from alumni assisted sales. We see on average it's about 20% of companies can see about $50 million a year in ROI from this kind of pipeline. Question is, how do you define job search support? So essentially this helping them to identify opportunities. So career counseling would be, that direct, we have relationships here, 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 and here. Job search support could just be how to do a job search, like AI resume updates or just really other resources that might be offered that might be more educational than actually placing you in a place or connecting you to recruiters. So, but it's a growing field, and the fact that, like I said, 75% for these things are huge. I do think we're going to see that continue as a solid strategy. When we think about the exit process, these numbers were also the same. So essentially, what do you offer at the exit process, or what actions do you take? So sending an email encouraging alumni to join the network, automated invites, reminders, providing materials, so thank you notes or welcome to the program or checklists of things to do, maybe even encouraging your supervisor or other leaders to meet with the exiting employee. Could be a departing gift is something that's pretty nice to receive sometimes, goes a little bit above and beyond. and providing resources for the employees as they're leaving. So maybe like a party or a cake or something. So not many people are doing those last two things, but they tend to be a nice touch. And like we've discussed, the more you do at exit, the stronger those ROI numbers tend to be, because we do believe that the more you do at exit, the better things are, but it should also kind of match that onboarding. All the good things you did on first day should kind of be replicated on the last day. Thinking about the exit survey structure, this was the first time we talked about exit surveys in our benchmarking report this year. 64% and 65% of law firms ask about the employee's reason for leaving, so that was pretty dead even. 63% of everyone, 59%, a little lower for law, ask about the sentiment of the organization. Like, did they love it? Did they hate it? Why are they leaving? Just kind of helps you kind of figure out, what you could have done better. And then 60% and, oops, sorry, my box is here in the middle of it. I can't see the number here. Hold on a second. Sorry, 85%. That was the biggest number. So 60% of all, but 85% of law firms ask information about the new employer. And we just think that's very smart, right? The more information you can get at the exit helps you kind of connect to that person after they leave. Typically what we say, as long as you have an email address, you can get this information at any time. But if you're asking about it in an exit survey, it's just one less step and another piece of data you have before you kind of kick off everything. So 85% of law firms are doing this, which is pretty great. The thing we asked this year, which we hadn't asked before, was about regrettable losses. So 34% of everyone is asking about, what could have done better? Are they tracking these things? Are they tracking where alumni who they wish hadn't left, they would have preferred to retain are going? But 53% of law firms are doing this. So it is a trend, and we're going to ask this again next year to see where it kind of changes and goes. But keeping track of your regrettable losses for both boomerang and business development opportunities, keeping that relationship warm is ultimately a good thing over time. The other thing we asked about was program eligibility. So we often get questions about who is involved and how do they split it up. So 80% of all companies invite all alumni to their programs. 69% of law firms do this. So it is something we've always noticed, that law firms are a bit more specific in who they invite. I think this has changed over the last few years, that it's become more about all alumni versus just your partners or associates or something. And similar here, 61% of companies versus 47% of law firms invite employees who have moved to competitors. And so we often hear that they don't want competitors involved, and that's completely fine. There is no reason to have them or not have them. It's up to personal preference. Though we do see our consulting firms, and that's why this number is a little higher on the all companies, the consulting firms and the financial firms do invite their competitors because they view it as an opportunity as well. So they view it as they could come back to the firm and bring that strategic knowledge back to them at some point. Or just that it's still good to keep that relationship warm, because they may someday leave that competitor and still go to a client or something. So it's nice to offer, and they see it as a strategic view. But interesting to see the numbers kind of pulled out this year. We also looked at conversion rates. So conversion meaning from employee to alumni. And so law firms are more effective at converting alumni, which was an interesting thing to pull out. All companies is about 60%. Law firms is about 67%, so a little higher, which is nice. And breaking that down even further, law firms have a bit of a wider range of those conversion rates. So while they have a higher average rate, both all companies and law firms are about 95% on the high end. On the low end, you see law firms at about 22% and then 42%. So conversion, from employees to alumni, joining the alumni program. And so when we think about why that might be different, why 22 and 42, why is that a little bit different? We started to look at things like budget. And so we had 3 different buckets from the budget that we asked for this specifically: less than 100,000, 100 to 300, and more than 300,000. And what we found was that the average number, 67% for law firms to convert employees to alumni was about 82% when they had more than $300,000 in that budget. For all companies, it's about 66%. So when you have a bit more money, kind of makes sense. You can do a little bit more. Maybe that exit becomes a little bit more personal, and they offer things like the gifts and some of those lower end things, but they might be doing a bit more because they have a bit more to play with. Now, if you don't have budget, that's okay. The other thing we looked at was program age. And so does age matter? And so essentially, if you were less than 2 years old, 3 to 10 years old, 11 to 20 years old, or 21 years or more, we see that the longer that you have a program, the more the rates go up. That's just because communication gets better, branding gets better, maybe you're including it more in that life cycle. So the earlier you start, those onboarding and recruiting stats matter because you've submitted the idea earlier on, so they know it's a thing they can use and a thing they can look forward to. But what we see is for law firms specifically, 11 to 20 years. So the older your program gets, you get about 80% conversion. So it's really about time. And so budget is good, but time is better. And so if you're less than 2 years old, you see about 52%, and all companies 48%. That's in line with even our own like launch statistics. And then 21 years, you start to see 95%. Law firms really, once you get to that age, is just it's ubiquitous. You have to join it. Similar for all companies, but a little less. So it's really about just putting in the time and fixing the life cycle, thinking about the onboarding experience, the employee experience, the offboarding experience, and alumni engagement. If once you kind of get all your processes in order, we know it all takes time. You don't do it in the first year, 2 years, even maybe 3 years. It takes time to move an organization's behavior and process changes. So it takes a bit of time, but it's good to see that by the time you get to that mature stage, you're working with as many alumni as you could possibly be working with. So we always always look at returns, ROI, when it comes to these things. And we always want to know what people are tracking. And so alumni assisted sales, the business development, law is 34%, a little bit higher than everyone else at 32%. Consulting firms also tend to look at the business development as well. Alumni referrals for new hires, the boomerang rate, 41 and 40, so almost the same. And the funny thing to me was the Net Promoter Score, that brand advocacy. Law firms do not care. 3% is what we see compared to the 27%. The thing I will say is if you're having trouble, 34%, there's such a room for people to track that. If you're having trouble connecting the dots, not being able to, get a box on a business intake form, sometimes tracking the Net Promoter Score is an easy thing to do to make the case for tracking those things. So Net Promoter Score, we have a feature in the PeoplePath platform. You can add polls and you can do it whenever you want on a consistent basis. And we recommend that if you ask questions like, are you likely to refer our products or services? Or have you referred our products or services in the last 12 months? You can start to track that. And if you start to see that in year one, 60% have tracked in the last year, and maybe 60% are also likely to track in the next year. Those are Net Promoter Score questions you can ask either in a survey or on a platform that make the case to get that form, that business intake form, updated. So it can really help tracking things like business development and or talent, because you can also ask questions like, how likely are you to refer talent to the firm? Or have you referred new hires? Things like that really just tell a story. And if you're having trouble tracking those other things, brand can really force that need to get better. So that's something I'm always happy to help talk to people about, how we can track more, what things we could be tracking, stuff that might be interesting to a business development or marketing team, or even an HR team. So don't discount Net Promoter Score. Use it to your benefit is what I would like to leave you with. The other thing we tend to ask, and this is the last bits of our benchmarking report really, is the program manager salary and time. This is something that we only provide to people who take the report. So being on this webinar today, you're kind of getting some exclusive access to this. But we like to get an idea of what the alumni program manager does with their day and how they're spending their time and what they're being compensated. So when we look at compensation, total compensation, we broke down into less than 100,000, 100,000 to 200,000, 200 to 300,000, over 300,000, or maybe they did not report. So when it comes down to all, the thing about law firms is that typically your lower paid salary is a little less than everybody else, but your higher paid salary is a little bit more than everybody else. So those who are in the 200 to 300,000 was about 42% compared to 22%. And those who didn't report were less. So we got more salary data from the law firms than we did from the general populace, which was really interesting to see. And then when we think about their time, how they spend time on their day, so we broke it into less than half, half to 99%, and then 100%. So there might not be much difference between 99 and 100, but maybe a split roll in some ways. And the law firms are a little bit lower here as well on the less than 100, but when it came to 100%, 66% of people who took the survey are full-time dedicated to this, compared to 59% for everyone else. So little differences here, but just really interesting to see how it breaks out. We also like to ask about function in the organization. And so every year is a little different, which always makes me laugh. And it doesn't really correlate to goals necessarily. So if your goal is to rehire, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be in HR. We all know that sometimes a lot of this goes down to where the budget is. We do think that if we can align these a bit more, we'll find more success. But essentially, when it comes down to it, it's not really surprising here that law firms typically don't put their program managers in HR. Only 10% do compared to 31. For the most part, it's marketing slash business development or business development. So the majority, it makes sense here because the goal typically is business development, which is much higher than the other percentages. So the other one I like to see is operations and corporate affairs, which is about equal in both. And for law firms, nobody yet has said that they have their own alumni department or some other department. But in what we found this year for the first time is that someone not in law actually has an alumni department that reports directly to likely a CEO. So I want to find out more about this one person and see what their role is really like and who they ultimately work with. But for now, this is the breakdown. Is not really surprising that it's all business development. So that really is a fast version of our benchmarking report. So what does the future look like? We do think that law firms are unique, and so they have different setups and structures than most, but a lot of the times the business development and talent really does look the same. And I think they could borrow from some of the other firms with that brand advocacy to make some cases to track more and get more actual ROI out of the program. But ultimately, we all know that it's coming down to technology. So the future is really fascinating. I think AI is going to play a big role in the next 12 to 18 months specifically, with some new tools, some ways to maybe make time efficiently, work for things like content creation or data management overall. And essentially that the workforce will continue to change pretty quickly over the next 1 to 2 years. So we'll all kind of be a part of that, and I'll kind of make sure. But the thing that I loved, and if you were at our New York event, was we asked the question of how much will employee alumni programs matter in the future? And everyone really doubled down on it because they think relationships are going to be so important, especially as technology rises and becomes so important in our day-to-day work. But the connecting of people at businesses is going to take a front seat. So we are excited to be a part of that and to continue to see where alumni fit into strategy. So we have a few minutes left. So if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to take them now. Otherwise, hopefully this was helpful. And thank you to Aaron Warner at Troutman for inviting us to be a part of the NALP section. And we were able to add on extra people today. So thank you for the chance to chat through these. Any questions? I don't see any popping into the chat. Okay. We will be sharing the slides afterwards. Yep. So everyone who is here and even those who aren't here right now who RSVP'd and registered, we will send you the slides and the recording so you have it as you need it, and our contact information, of course. So very happy to provide value. I'm glad to hear that it's worked for you. And so thank you guys for attending, and we'll see you at the next event.